The ship moved through the darkness of space like a ghost. It had no lights. It made no sound. To anyone watching, it looked like a broken freighter drifting toward its death. But this was no freighter. This was the HSS Prometheus, the most dangerous warship humanity had ever built. Captain Alara Vance stood on the bridge with her hands behind her back. Her eyes watched the main screen, where distant stars burned like cold fire. Around her, the crew worked in silence. They spoke only when necessary. Every person knew what was at stake. The war had lasted 11 years. 11 years of death. 11 years of losing. The Galactic Empire had attacked humanity without warning. They called humans primitive creatures and short-lived animals. The Empire was made of 12 ancient species who had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. They had millions of warships. They controlled thousands of worlds. When they decided humanity should die, most believed the war would last only months. They were wrong. Humans fought back with everything they had. They lost battle after battle, but they refused to surrender. For every ship destroyed, they built two more. For every colony burned, they hid their people deeper in space. The Empire grew frustrated. These weak creatures should have died already. Why did they keep fighting? But now, after 11 years, humanity was truly losing. Earth's colonies were falling one by one. The fleet was broken. Resources were gone. The Empire was preparing its final attack on Earth itself. This was why the Prometheus existed. Captain Vance turned to her second-in-command. Lieutenant Commander Samir Okonkwo was a tall man with dark skin and tired eyes. He had not slept properly in weeks, and none of them had. "Status report," Vance said quietly. "All systems running silent, Captain. The stealth field is holding. Imperial sensors are not detecting us." Samir paused. "We crossed into core territory 2 hours ago. We are now deeper inside the Empire than any human has ever been." Vance nodded slowly. The core territory, the heart of the enemy. No human ship had ever come here and returned. The Empire believed it was impossible. Their arrogance was about to cost them everything. The mission was called Operation Black Sun. It was humanity's last hope. The plan was simple but insane. One ship would travel through uncharted space, avoiding all known routes. It would sneak into the Empire's core. And then it would strike at the one target no one believed could be reached, Throne's Reach. Throne's Reach was a ring world, a massive artificial structure that circled a dying star. It was the political heart of the Empire. The High Council of all 12 species met there. The greatest admirals commanded their fleets from there. If Throne's Reach fell, the Empire would fall into chaos. The journey had taken 8 months. 8 months of flying through dead zones where stars had exploded long ago. 8 months of navigating through asteroid fields that should have destroyed them. 8 months of hiding from patrols and praying their disguise would hold. The Prometheus was covered in the wreckage of a Vorthani freighter. The Vorthani were one of the 12 species of the Empire. They were traders, and their ships traveled everywhere without suspicion. Human engineers had spent months building this disguise. From the outside, the Prometheus looked like a damaged cargo ship limping home for repairs. But underneath the disguise was death. The Prometheus carried enough weapons to destroy a small moon. Missiles that could crack planets. Energy cannons that could cut through any armor. And at its core, antimatter engines powerful enough to turn the ship itself into a bomb. Chief Engineer Diego Reyes climbed up from the lower decks. He was a short man with gray hair and oil-stained hands. His family had been on a refugee convoy 3 years ago. The convoy never arrived at its destination. The Empire had destroyed it. Every man, woman, and child gone in seconds. "Engines are stable," Diego reported, "but we're running cold, Captain. The crew is freezing down there." "Can they handle it?" Vance asked. Diego almost smiled. "They're human. They can handle anything." This was one of humanity's advantages. Humans came from a planet with ice ages and deserts, with burning summers and freezing winters. Their bodies could survive temperatures that would kill most Imperial species in hours. So the Prometheus ran without heat, hiding its energy signature from enemy sensors while the crew shivered in the darkness. Weapons Officer Yuki Tanaka sat at her station, checking the missile systems for the 100th time. She was young, barely 30 years old, but her eyes were old. She had served on another ship before the Prometheus, the HSS Valor. When the Empire ambushed her fleet, the Valor was torn apart. Yuki was the only survivor. She had floated in the wreckage for 6 days before rescue arrived. She never talked about those 6 days. She never talked about watching her friends die. But everyone knew why she had volunteered for this mission. She wanted revenge. The truth was, everyone on the Prometheus wanted revenge. The crew had been chosen carefully. Every person had lost something to the Empire. Homes, families, friends. They were ghosts crewing a ghost ship, and they had come to haunt the Empire. Captain Vance had lost Mars Colony. She had been born there, raised there, fallen in love there. When the Empire glassed the planet, 20 million people died in minutes. Her husband, her daughter, her entire world turned to ash and memory. She did not cry anymore. She had no tears left. All she had was this mission. "Captain," Samir said suddenly, "we're receiving Imperial communications. They're talking about Earth." Vance felt her chest tighten. "What are they saying?" Samir listened for a moment, his face growing pale. "The Empire is preparing a final offensive. They're gathering a fleet of 50,000 ships. They plan to attack Earth in 40 days. They want to end the war by destroying humanity completely." Silence fell over the bridge. 50,000 ships. Earth's remaining defenses could maybe stop 5,000. This was not an attack. This was an execution. Vance straightened her back. "Then we have 40 days to change their plans." She looked at her crew. These tired, frozen, broken people who had given everything for a species that might not survive. They looked back at her with fire in their eyes. "The Empire thinks they've already won," Vance said. "They think we're finished. They're sitting in their perfect ring world, celebrating our destruction." She paused. "They have no idea what's coming." The Prometheus continued its silent journey through the darkness. One ship, 2,847 souls, flying towards certain death, carrying humanity's last hope. The Empire had made one fatal mistake. They had assumed humans would accept their extinction quietly. They had forgotten a simple truth that every human learned as a child. A cornered animal is the most dangerous creature in the universe. The Prometheus moved deeper into enemy territory with each passing hour. Around them, Imperial space was filled with activity. Trade ships flew between worlds. Military patrols scanned the darkness. Communication signals buzzed through space like invisible rivers. And in the middle of it all, a human warship pretended to be a broken freighter. Captain Vance watched the sensor display with careful eyes. 3 Imperial patrol ships had just passed within 50 kilometers of them. She had held her breath the entire time. But the patrols had seen only a damaged Vorthani cargo ship. They had moved on without a second look. "That was close," Samir said quietly. "It will get closer," Vance replied. "We still have a long way to go." The journey to Throne's Reach required passing through 7 security checkpoints. Each checkpoint scanned every ship that passed. Each checkpoint could end the mission in seconds if they detected anything wrong. The Empire believed their security was perfect. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Lieutenant Chen sat at the communications station, his fingers dancing across his controls. He was young, only 25, but he was perhaps the most important person on the ship. His job was to fool the Empire's computers. 6 years ago, humanity had captured an Imperial communication device. The encryption on it was incredibly complex. Imperial scientists claimed it would take 1,000,000 years to break. They said no primitive species could ever understand their technology. A team of human mathematicians proved them wrong. For 6 years, hundreds of humans worked on the problem. They were not scientists in the traditional sense. Many of them were considered strange by normal standards. They saw patterns where others saw chaos. They understood numbers in ways that seemed almost magical. Some people called them savants. Others called them obsessed. They broke the unbreakable code in 6 years. Now Lieutenant Chen used that knowledge to create fake Imperial identification codes. When the checkpoint scanned the Prometheus, they saw exactly what he wanted them to see. A Vorthani freighter called the Singing Star, carrying medical supplies to a colony near the core. Damaged engines, requesting permission to proceed for repairs. The first checkpoint let them pass. Then the second. Then the third. Each time Vance expected alarms. Each time she expected death. And each time, the Empire's arrogance blinded them to the danger. While they traveled, the crew prepared for battle. In the weapons bay, Yuki Tanaka checked every missile personally. She ran her hands over them like they were precious children. Each one represented a chance to hurt the Empire. Each one represented justice for her dead friends. In the engine room, Diego Reyes pushed his team hard. The Prometheus was running on minimal power to avoid detection. But when the time came, they would need everything the ship could give. Diego made adjustments, replaced worn parts, and prayed to whatever gods might listen that his engines would hold. The crew lived in difficult conditions. The ship was cold, dark, and cramped. Food was limited to nutrition bars that tasted like cardboard. Water was recycled so many times it had a strange metallic taste. Sleep came in short bursts between duty shifts. But nobody complained. Every person on this ship had volunteered. Every person knew the mission might be their last. They had made peace with death long before leaving Earth. At night, when she could not sleep, Captain Vance walked through the ship. She visited every section, talked to every crew member. She learned their names, their stories, their reasons for being here. There was Private Marcus Webb, whose entire family had been killed when the Empire bombed the colony of New Sydney. He was 18 years old and looked like a boy playing soldier. But his eyes were hard as stone. There was Dr. Sarah Kim, the ship's medical officer, who had worked in a hospital on Luna when the Empire attacked. She had watched thousands of patients die because the medicine ran out. Now she kept the crew alive with skill and determination. There was Master Sergeant Obi Adeyemi, who led the ship's small marine force. His original unit had been wiped out during the Battle of Proxima. He was the only survivor. He had carved the names of every fallen soldier into his armor. Each person had a story. Each story was filled with loss. Together, they formed a family bound not by blood, but by grief and purpose. On the fifth day inside Imperial space, Samir intercepted a message that made everyone stop. "Captain," he said, his voice shaking slightly, "the High Council is meeting at Throne's Reach, all 12 species representatives. They're discussing the final attack on Earth." Vance closed her eyes for a moment. "When?" "The meeting is scheduled for 36 hours from now." 36 hours. In 36 hours, the leaders of the entire Galactic Empire would be in one place. The people who had ordered humanity's destruction, the people who had killed billions of innocents, all of them gathered together like a gift. Vance opened her eyes. They burned with cold fire. "Change of plans," she said. "We're not just hitting Throne's Reach. We're going to kill them all." The bridge crew looked at her. Nobody spoke. Nobody needed to. They understood. The original plan was to destroy the command center and escape. That plan had always been unlikely. Now Vance was proposing something even more extreme. A direct attack on the High Council itself. No escape. No survival. Just destruction. "The security will be incredible," Samir said carefully. "Every admiral, every guard, every warship in the Corps will be protecting that meeting." "Good," Vance replied. "They'll all be in one place." She turned to address the entire bridge crew. Her voice was calm but carried the weight of absolute certainty. "The Empire has spent 11 years trying to destroy us. They burned our colonies. They murdered our families. They called us animals and laughed while our children died." She paused. "In 36 hours, we're going to show them what animals can do." The crew responded with silence. But it was a silence of agreement, a silence of purpose. The Prometheus passed through the fourth checkpoint without incident, then the fifth. The Empire's perfect security continued to fail against human cleverness. 20 hours later, they cleared the final checkpoint. Ahead of them, visible on long-range sensors, was Throne's Reach. The ring world was enormous, a band of metal and glass circling a pulsar like a crown. Millions lived there. Thousands of ships protected it, and somewhere inside, the people who wanted to kill humanity were gathering to celebrate their victory. They had no idea that death was already among them. Throne's Reach was the most beautiful thing the Galactic Empire had ever built. The ring world stretched across space like a silver ribbon, circling a captured pulsar that pulsed with blue light. Billions of creatures lived on its inner surface. Cities of crystal and metal rose toward artificial skies. Gardens bloomed with plants from 1,000 worlds. It was paradise made real. At the center of this paradise stood the council spire. It rose from the ring-world's surface like a needle pointing at the stars. This was where the 12 species made their decisions. This was where the fate of the galaxy was decided. Today, it was where humanity's death would be planned. Grand Admiral Vortekin walked through the spire's great hall with slow, confident steps. He was a Korthani, a species of tall, gray-skinned beings with 4 arms and eyes that glowed like amber. The Korthani had dominated space for 50,000 years. They considered themselves the natural rulers of all life. Vortekin had commanded the war against humanity for the past 5 years. Under his leadership, the Empire had crushed human resistance. Colony after colony had fallen. Fleet after fleet had been destroyed. Now only Earth remained. In 40 days, that would end too. The council chamber was already filling when he arrived. Representatives from all 12 species sat in their designated sections. The Vorthani traders, with their flexible bodies and calculating minds. The Selkari warriors, massive creatures covered in natural armor. The Mindari telepaths, small beings who communicated through thought. Each species had its place. Each species had its power. And above them all, in the highest seats, sat the Supreme Council, the 12 leaders who ruled the galaxy. Vortekin took his position at the military podium. Behind him, a massive screen showed maps, fleet positions, and battle plans. He had prepared this presentation carefully. It would be his greatest triumph. "Fellow members of the Empire," he began, his voice echoing through the chamber. "The war against the human infestation is nearly complete. Our fleets have driven them back to their home system. Their colonies are ash. Their military is broken. In 40 days, we will end this conflict forever." The council members made sounds of approval. This was what they wanted to hear. "Operation Final Dawn will deploy 50,000 warships to the Sol system," Vortekin continued. "We will destroy their orbital defenses, neutralize their remaining fleet, and sterilize their homeworld. By the end, not a single human will remain alive." A Mindari counselor raised a thin hand. "Admiral, some have expressed concern about the intensity of human resistance. Even facing certain defeat, they continue to fight. Is there any risk they might attempt something desperate?" Vortekin made a sound that passed for laughter among his species. What could they possibly attempt? Their largest remaining fleet has perhaps 2,000 ships. They have no allies, no resources. They are trapped in their home system like animals in a cage. "But they are clever animals," the Mindari pressed. "They have surprised us before." "Clever enough to delay the inevitable," Vortekin admitted, "but not clever enough to change it. Humans are a young species, short-lived, emotional. They fight with passion instead of strategy. That is why they lose." He gestured at the screen behind him. "Look at our defenses. 10,000 warships protect the core. 3,000 guard thrones reach alone. The security grid can detect a grain of sand from light years away. No enemy has reached the core in 10,000 years. The humans certainly cannot." The council seemed satisfied. They had heard what they wanted to hear. Humans were no threat. Victory was certain. They could return to their comfortable lives without worry. Far below the council chamber, in the shipping lanes that circled the ringworld, a damaged Vorthani freighter requested permission to dock. Its engines were failing. Its crew needed medical attention. It was exactly the kind of routine request that happened thousands of times each day. A junior sensor officer named Kelvaran noticed something strange. The freighter's mass readings were unusual. It seemed heavier than it should be for its size. He flagged it for review. His supervisor, a bored Korthani named Tetheran, glanced at the report. "It's probably just dense cargo. Medical equipment weighs more than standard goods." "Should we scan it more closely?" Kelvaran asked. Tetheran shook his head. "During a council meeting, do you have any idea how many ships are in this space right now? We'd be scanning for days." He deleted the flag. "It's just a freighter. Let it through." Kelvaran hesitated. Something felt wrong. But he was young, and his supervisor was experienced. Surely Tetheran knew better. "Yes, sir," he said, and approved the docking request. The Prometheus moved into the inner shipping lanes of Throne's Reach. Around it, thousands of vessels traveled in organized streams. Freighters carried goods. Passenger ships transported tourists. Military vessels patrolled with casual confidence. Nobody looked twice at a damaged cargo ship limping toward repair docks. On the bridge, Captain Vance watched the Council spire grow larger on her screen. It was a beautiful structure. Elegant, proud, a symbol of everything the Empire believed about itself. "Final positions," she ordered quietly. The crew moved with practiced precision. Weapon systems were armed but hidden. Engine power was ready to surge on command. Marines checked their armor and prepared for possible boarding action. Samir approached Vance with a datapad. "We've intercepted the Council's schedule. The full session begins in 4 hours. All 12 Supreme Council members will be present, along with over 100 senior military commanders." Vance nodded slowly. Their entire leadership, in one place, at one time. "They believe they're completely safe," Samir said. "They have no idea we're here." Vance looked at the Council spire. Somewhere inside, Admiral Vortekin was probably celebrating his coming victory. He was probably laughing about the primitive humans he had conquered. He was probably planning how he would be remembered as the hero who ended the human threat. He was about to become a different kind of example. "Send a message to the crew," Vance said. "Full assembly in the main bay. It's time they knew exactly what we're doing." An hour later, the entire crew of the Prometheus stood together in the cargo bay. Over 2,000 men and women in worn uniforms, their faces marked by exhaustion and determination. They looked at their captain and waited. Vance stood on a raised platform so everyone could see her. When she spoke, her voice was steady. "When I was a child on Mars, my grandmother told me a story. She said that long ago, when humans lived only on Earth, a great general faced an impossible battle. His army was small, his enemy was vast. Everyone told him to surrender. Do you know what he said?" The crew was silent. He said, "We will either find a way, or we will make one." Vance paused, looking at the faces of her crew. "The Empire has called us primitive. They have called us animals. They have tried to exterminate us like pests. In 4 hours, we're going to teach them what a mistake that was. We're going to burn their council, we're going to shatter their command, and we're going to show the entire galaxy that humanity will never ever surrender." The crew responded with silence. Then someone started clapping. Then another. Then the entire bay erupted in cheers and shouts. They were ready. The hunt was about to begin. The council session had been going for 2 hours when everything changed. Grand Admiral Vortekin was explaining the final phase of Operation Final Dawn when his communicator buzzed with an urgent alert. He frowned. Interruptions during council sessions were forbidden, except for extreme emergencies. He glanced at the message. Then he read it again. His amber eyes widened. "Admiral," one of the council members asked, "is something wrong?" Before Vortekin could answer, the lights in the chamber flickered. Every screen went dark. The communication systems died. In seconds, the council chamber was cut off from the rest of the Empire. Far above the ringworld's surface, the communication relays that connected Throne's reach to the rest of the galaxy exploded in balls of fire. One after another, they were destroyed by precision missile strikes. Within 30 seconds, the most important location in the Empire was completely deaf and blind. The attack had begun. The Prometheus dropped its disguise like a predator shedding its skin. The fake Vorthani hull plating fell away, revealing the sharp, dangerous lines of a human warship. Weapons emerged from hidden compartments. Engine power surged as the ship came fully alive. Captain Vance stood on her bridge, calm as stone while chaos exploded around them. "All weapons free," she ordered. "Target the nearest defense platforms." Yuki Tanaka's fingers danced across her controls. Missiles launched in rapid succession, streaking toward their targets with deadly accuracy. The first defense platform exploded before its crew even understood they were under attack. Then the second. Then the third. Imperial ships nearby tried to respond, but they were confused. Their communications were down. They couldn't coordinate. They didn't even know what they were fighting. A Selkari cruiser turned toward the Prometheus, its weapons charging. Diego Reyes pushed power to the engines, and the human ship twisted away in a maneuver that should have been impossible. The cruiser's shots went wide, hitting empty space. "Return fire," Vance commanded. The Prometheus answered with its main cannons. Beams of focused energy cut through the cruiser's shields like they were made of paper. The alien ship broke apart, its hull torn open from bow to stern. More Imperial ships were responding now. Dozens of them, then hundreds. They formed attack formations and moved to intercept the strange enemy that had appeared in their midst. But they had never fought humans before. Not like this. Human combat doctrine was different from anything the Empire had encountered. Imperial species fought with patience and overwhelming numbers. They advanced slowly, grinding down enemies over time. They valued preservation of their ships and crews. Humans fought like they were already dead. The Prometheus dove into the middle of the Imperial formation, firing in all directions. It never stopped moving. It never slowed down. Every time an enemy ship tried to target it, the Prometheus was already somewhere else. "Hard left! Bring us around that carrier!" Vance shouted. The ship spun, using a massive Imperial carrier as cover. Enemy fire meant for the Prometheus struck the carrier instead, tearing holes in its hull. The carrier's own allies were destroying it. "Launch boarding pods," Vance ordered. Master Sergeant Adeyemi led 50 Marines in armored pods that shot from the Prometheus toward a nearby command ship. The pods smashed through the enemy hull, and the Marines poured out with weapons blazing. Within minutes, they had taken the ship's bridge and turned its weapons against other Imperial vessels. The Empire's own ships were now fighting each other. In the council chamber, Grand Admiral Vortekin finally understood what was happening. A human ship, a single human ship had penetrated the core. It was inside Throne's reach. It was attacking. This was impossible. This could not be happening, but it was. "We need to evacuate the council," one of his aides said urgently. "Get them to safety." "Where?" Vortekin demanded. "Communications are down. We can't reach the escape ships. We can't even reach the guards outside this room." For the first time in his long career, the Grand Admiral felt something he had never experienced before: fear. Outside, the battle was becoming a slaughter. The Imperial fleet was vast, but it was built for fighting enemies who followed rules. Humans followed no rules. They rammed smaller ships with their own hull. They detonated damaged vessels as weapons. They launched Marines who fought with bare hands when their weapons ran out. The Prometheus was taking damage now. Holes appeared in its hull. Sections lost pressure. Crew members died at their stations. But the ship kept fighting. Diego Reyes was screaming into his communicator. "Reactor 3 is failing. We've lost half our engine power." "Keep us moving," Vance shouted back. "Whatever it takes." Diego made a decision that any Imperial engineer would have considered insane. He disconnected the safety systems on the remaining reactors. The engines were now running far beyond their design limits. They could explode at any moment. But they were also generating more power than any human ship had ever produced. The Prometheus accelerated to impossible speeds, cutting through the Imperial formation like a blade through flesh. On the bridge, Samir looked at the tactical display. "Captain, we've created an opening. There's a clear path to the Council Spire." Vance looked at the screen. The spire rose above the chaos, tall and proud. Inside were the beings who had ordered humanity's extinction, the beings who had killed billions, the beings who thought they could murder an entire species without consequences. "All hands," Vance announced through the ship-wide communication. "This is the captain. We have one final task to complete. I want everyone to know that it has been the greatest honor of my life to serve with you. You are the best crew any captain could ask for. Today we make history. Today we save our species." She paused, feeling the weight of the moment. "Today, we show the universe what humans are made of." The crew responded with cheers and battle cries. Even those who were wounded, even those who were dying, raised their voices. "Helm," Vance said quietly. "Set course for the Council Spire. Maximum speed." "Captain," the helmsman said, "at this speed, we won't be able to stop." Vance nodded. "I know." The Prometheus turned toward its final target. Behind it, destroyed ships drifted like broken toys. Around it, the surviving Imperial vessels tried desperately to stop it, but nothing could stop the Prometheus now. Vance opened a communication channel, not to her crew, not to the Empire, to everyone, every frequency, every receiver within range. "This is Captain Alara Vance of the human starship Prometheus. You called us primitive. You called us animals. You tried to exterminate us. You thought you could murder our families and face no consequences." Her voice was cold and hard. "You were wrong. We are humanity. We never forgive. We never forget. And we never, ever surrender. Remember this day. Remember what happens when you push us too far. She cut the channel. The council spire filled her screen, growing larger with every second. "Arm the antimatter reserves," she ordered. "Armed and ready," Yuki reported. Vance took a deep breath. She thought of her husband, her daughter, her home. "For Earth," she whispered. The Prometheus flew toward destiny. Grand Admiral Vortekin stood at the window of the council chamber and watched death approach. The human ship was coming straight toward them. It was damaged, burning, trailing smoke and debris, but it was not stopping. It was accelerating. And Vortekin understood, with horrible clarity, exactly what was about to happen. "Everyone down!" he screamed. It was too late. The HSS Prometheus struck the council spire at full speed. In the same instant, Captain Vance gave her final order. The antimatter reserves detonated. The explosion was visible from space. A ball of white fire erupted from the impact point, expanding outward at incredible speed. The council spire vaporized instantly. The Supreme Council members, the admirals, the generals, the representatives of all 12 species, they were gone in less than a second. They did not even have time to scream. The blast wave kept expanding. 63 Imperial warships were caught in it. They were torn apart like toys. Their crews killed before they could react. The ring-world's surface cracked and buckled. Massive sections of Throne's Reach began to break away. 10,000 years of Imperial glory destroyed in a heartbeat. On the other side of the ring world, far from the explosion, a young communications officer named Kelvaran watched in horror. He was the one who had flagged the strange freighter. He was the one whose warning had been ignored. Now he understood what that freighter had really been. "God save us," he whispered. "What have we done?" The destruction of Throne's Reach sent shock waves through the entire galaxy. Without the communication relays, news traveled slowly. But eventually, every world, every fleet, every creature in the Empire learned what had happened. The Supreme Council was dead. All 12 leaders, gone. The command structure was destroyed. The admirals and generals who coordinated the Empire's military had been in that spire. Now there was no one to give orders. And the final offensive against Earth? It fell apart before it could begin. Without central command, the fleet of 50,000 ships had no direction. Different species began arguing about who should lead. Old grudges surfaced. Old hatreds awoke. Within weeks, the Galactic Empire was at war with itself. The Korthani blamed the Selkari for security failures. The Selkari blamed the Vorthani for letting a disguised ship through their shipping lanes. The Mindari accused everyone of incompetence. Species that had cooperated for thousands of years suddenly saw each other as threats. The alliance of 12 became 12 separate enemies. On Earth, Admiral Chen received the news in stunned silence. The Prometheus had succeeded beyond anyone's wildest hopes. The ship was destroyed. The crew was dead. But they had killed the Empire's leadership and shattered its unity. The final transmission from the Prometheus arrived 3 days after the battle. It had been sent just before the attack, traveling through space at the speed of light. Captain Vance's voice was calm and clear. "Admiral Chen, if you're receiving this, it means we succeeded. The High Council is destroyed. Throne's Reach is burning. The Empire will never be the same." There was a pause in the recording. "I know you told me this mission was insane. You were right. But sometimes insane is the only option. My crew knew they weren't coming home. They came anyway. They fought anyway. They died anyway. Because they believed that humanity deserves to survive." Another pause. "Use this chance, Admiral. Rebuild our fleets. Strengthen our defenses. Make alliances with anyone willing to stand against the Empire. We've given you time. Don't waste it." The recording continued for a moment longer. "Tell the people of Earth that the Prometheus crew died free. Tell them we died fighting. Tell them we died human." Vance's voice softened. "And tell them we won." The transmission ended. Admiral Chen played it for the surviving leaders of humanity. Men and women who had been preparing for extinction now sat in stunned silence. Tears ran down many faces. But they were not tears of grief alone. They were tears of hope. For the first time in years, humanity had a future. The following decades changed the galaxy forever. Humanity used the time that Prometheus had bought them. They rebuilt their military. They made alliances with smaller species who had suffered under imperial rule. They developed new technologies. They became strong. When the fragmented empire finally tried to attack Earth again, 20 years later, they faced a different humanity. The battle was bloody and terrible, but this time, humanity won, and won again, and kept winning. Within a century, humans had become one of the dominant powers in the galaxy. The species that the Empire had dismissed as primitive animals now sat at the table with the greatest civilizations in existence. And everyone remembered how it began. The story of the Prometheus became legend. Every human child learned about Captain Vance and her crew. They learned about Diego Reyes and his impossible engines, about Yuki Tanaka and her missiles of justice, about Samir Okonkwo and his cool head under fire, about 2,847 heroes who flew into certain death and changed history. Monuments were built on every human world. The largest stood on Earth, a massive statue of the Prometheus with the names of every crew member carved into its base. Families came from across the galaxy to touch those names and remember. But the story was not just told on human worlds. Across the galaxy, other species told the tale of the Prometheus. Some told it as a warning, others told it as inspiration, but all told it with the same message. Never underestimate humans. They are small, they live short lives, they feel things too deeply. But when they are pushed into a corner, when they have nothing left to lose, they become the most dangerous creatures in the universe. They will sacrifice everything. They will endure anything. They will fight until their last breath and then keep fighting as ghosts. On the ruins of Throne's Reach, now a dead monument circling a cold star, someone carved words into the broken metal. No one knows who put them there, but every ship that passes can see them, glowing faintly against the darkness. The words were simple. Here the humans came. Here the empire fell. Remember this, all who pass. Never corner a human. Never take everything from them. Because when a human has nothing left to lose, they become something more than flesh and blood. They become vengeance itself. And across the galaxy, in every language, in every culture, the lesson was learned. Humanity had earned its place among the stars, with blood, with sacrifice, with a single ship that refused to accept extinction. The Prometheus was gone, but its fire would burn forever.